Phew, it's a lot easier now that I've actually tried it. Hyun-woo let out a sigh of relief as he got out of the unit. Once again, technological advances were to be admired. The scenery, the people, and monsters in the game looked very realistic. The battles were overflowing with a sense of realism. Although he had started playing the game for the sake of the recruitment test, he thought he might get deeply immersed and beyond. However, Hyun-woo could not afford to get blindly obsessed with the game. The game was great, but for him, it was more important to get by. He was in a different situation compared to the other applicants. It was a given he wouldn't be able to feed himself and pay for his mother's hospital fees if he didn't work. He couldn't just give up everything and enter this 1 in 200 war with his life on the line. However, the game is just as important. I can't quit work, but I can put the private academy on hold for the moment. Then, I suppose I can play more if I sleep less. The clock indicated it was already 2 in the morning. The Hyun-woo who skipped lunch in order to set up the unit, fetched himself a carton of milk and sat in front of the computer. He had underestimated New World. After he had actually tried the game, he realized it was quite different from any other games. As a result, he felt the need to look up more information during his spare time. Sure enough, within a span of a month, the game was the top topic that came up and dozens of related sites had formed. There were sites that shared information with users. While the information was insufficient, it was good to thoroughly look over them just in case. Hyun-woo went onto the sites and looked through the information. However, information could only be understood if one had some background knowledge. Since he didn't know much, they were all Greek to him. At that moment, after clicking through the forums without much thought, the milk carton fell from Hyun-woo's hand. What's this? Hyun-woo moved his face right up to the monitor and read through the forum. Whoa, and no way. Is this for real? Hyun-woo forgot about his fatigue and immediately entered the unit. Ark entered Haroon together with a hazy light. Stat window. When Ark hastily looked at the open stat window, all color drained from his face. My god. I was done in. Character name Ark, race human, fame 0, level 1, profession none, title none, health 100, mana 100, strength 1, -14, agility 1, -14, stamina 1, -14, wisdom 1, -14, intelligence 1, -14, luck 1, -14. All the stats turned red and had dropped down to 1. The information Ark saw online turned out to be true. On the forum, there was a tale of a newbie user who died without knowing much. According to it, his stats was deducted by 1 each time he died. And like Ark, he didn't check the deducted stat and leveled up, permanently losing the stats in process. The figures inside the bracket indicated the deducted stat, and if one leveled up without recovering them, those stats could never be returned. Ark was able to understand everything that had happened until now. So, this was why the people around me showed extreme reactions. They must have thought of me as someone who had given up on the game since I kept going at it like a nutcase, and every time I died, my stats got hacked away. Damn it, so that's why Bulma said she was so sorry. He felt like an erupting volcano about to explode. Ark, having experience playing many games, he knew firsthand the importance of stats. Every time you level up in New World you are given 10 points. This means at level 10 you should have 100 points. However, Ark had already lost 84. In other words, this means at level 10 he would essentially be lower than a level 2. This was a huge difference. No, the bad side aside, he wouldn't be able to do anything at this rate. Before logging off, Ark was panting while holding a dagger, but he wasn't tired. He had 1 strength, so the dagger was heavy, and also 1 agility, so his movement were sluggish. From the beginning that bastard Andal knew all about it. Bulma knew too. They took advantage of me in order to hunt safely. All this for a handful of crappy items. For 84 stat points, he got a bunch of wolf leather, meat, and a rusty sword. Ark clenched and grinded his teeth while searching for them. However, they must have fled the village, or cut off all means of communication, as he wasn't able to find them anywhere. Then again, there wasn't anything that he could do even if he caught them. With these stats, he could not exact revenge, and they could not return his lost stats anyway. In the end, Ark sank down to the ground with a hollow expression. Everything in front of his eyes became dark. Damn it, to think that such system would exist. The stat couldn't fall below 1, so he really had a body that had nothing to lose now. His anger subsided a little and his guilt rose. No matter how hurried he'd felt, he should have looked through the information first. Even 1 hour, no, 30 minutes of skimming through a forum would have prevented such a mistake. It was his fault for thinking that this game would be no different from other games. Ark realized how much of a difference one small piece of information could make. No, but before that, the disappointment on himself surfaced. What a stupid bastard I was. Why didn't I notice the reason Bulma was being so kind? It may just be a game, but in the end those guys are only human. There's no reason for them to be so nice to a useless guy like me. If this was reality, he definitely would never have made that mistake. Andal and Bulma. You bastards picked on the wrong person. I'll make you regret it someday. Life is unfair beyond imagination. Survival would be impossible if one underestimated it. If there was one thing Ark had learned while working hard in real life, that would be it. Sometimes, after working a part-time job for over a month, he didn't receive his pay. The manager had taken Ark for an easy mark because he was just a student. So, Ark didn't go to school for a week and clung to the manager until he finally got his money. He couldn't give up because his life was on the line. Ark had suffered similar situations for the past few years. He couldn't fall apart here. He had to get stronger somehow and get his revenge on those bastards. But for now, there were more urgent matters. 1 hour later, Ark went and found Hansen again. Give me a job. If it isn't the customer who came in a while ago. Didn't you say you were going outside to hunt? I'm about to cry, okay. Don't ask and please give me a job. Ark said as he let out a deep sigh. He had spent an hour digging through the internet after what had happened. Perhaps because there were almost no idiots who had made the same mistake as Ark, there was barely any information. Still, Ark determinedly searched through the internet. He thought there might be a way to restore his stats if the system deducts stats with each death. If it was impossible to restore the stats, then there'd be no reason to put the lost stat numbers in parentheses. Thankfully, he was able to find information about that part a little while ago. The way was rather simple. If you hunted a lot, the lost stats would be naturally restored. But there was also a problem here. If the lost stats were not completely restored and the user leveled up in that state, then those stats would be gone forever. Hence, he had to recover all of his 84 stat points before leveling up to level 2. Mice naturally came to Ark's mind. Each mouse gave 1 EXP. However, leveling up by hunting mice alone would be an impossible feat since many mice had to be killed in order to level up. It might be possible for him to restore many stats. Although I would much rather make a new character. In New World, only one character was allowed per account. Sink or swim, he had to suck it up and continue playing with his current character. Although he was already way behind the other applicants even at the start, there was no other way. Okay, there aren't a lot of people who are willing to work in this village, so there's plenty of work I can give you. Go right now to the smithy. The number of mice these days has increased there as well. Ark ran right to the smithy. Then, before the blacksmith could even open his mouth, he jumped into the cellar. The situation was no better than before. At least all of his stats had been at 15 before. Now they were at a measly 1. He'd be no better than a 90-year-old grandpa holding a dagger. If his health points had been reduced too, he'd probably have gone mad. It's fine. Let's not think about it anymore. It's no use coming this far and regretting it. Like when I was up against wolves, the only way is to carefully take the mice on one by one. His attitude was different than before. There was nowhere to run. If he couldn't even kill a mouse, then he should give up on the game. Ark gave it everything that he had as he battled a single mouse. In other words, he had to give it his all to kill a single mouse. As a result, he had to investigate into a more efficient way to hunt. While doing this, he realized he could perceive many points. The speed and strength with which I can swing the dagger has definitely decreased. But the fighting experience I gained while hunting wild dogs and wolves is there to some degree. Even though it takes longer to hunt, it actually feels easier than before. That means. It meant combat wasn't based on the attack and defense stats. Similar to reality, by utilizing fighting experience, the situation could be changed at any time. It was difficult for a level 1 user to defeat a player who is level 10, but with a level 4 or 5, by following fighting experience, it was possible. From then on, Ark observed the movements of the mice. He fought while learning how to move in each situation and when to hit the mouse to deal a little more damage. He went through similar battles such as this several times and grasped the techniques of the mice. Okay, it's not going to work if I just randomly swing the dagger. The mouse is using its head to move. So, I should learn its movements as if I'm facing a real mouse. Ark dealt with all of the mice in the smithy cellar. Even so, there weren't any changes to his stats yet. Even though I've killed 30 of them. Is it truly possible to recover my lost stats like this? Although he had his worries, he had no other choice. Even if he were to go outside the village, it would be difficult to deal with one rabbit. There was likely no one who would allow him to squeeze into a party. If he wasn't able to restore his stats with the mice, the game would end then and there. I'm going to believe they'll be restored. They'll be recovered for sure. Ark received his 10 pieces of wheat bread from the smith and received another request. This time, it was a request about the mice in the cellar of the fancy goods shop. In an hour and a half, he was able to finish 3 requests. Thanks to a lot of experience, the strength and agility that was lost to a huge blow has been found again. Strength up by 1. Agility has been restored by 1. The message that he longed for finally appeared. He felt happiness, but at the same time, he felt at a loss as to what he should do. An hour and a half. He was only able to recover 2 points after an hour and a half of non-stop mice hunting. How many mice did he have to kill to recover the remaining 82 points? But I'll get them back no matter what it takes. I can't just start like this, with these stupid penalties. Ark clenched his teeth. Hyun-woo rubbed his bloodshot eyes and headed to work. He had been able to regain only 6 points from staying up the entire night. While he was lucky there was a way to restore his stats, thinking about the remaining 78 points he started to feel faint. Should I just give up on my stats and raise my level instead? It would cross his mind from time to time, but Hyun-woo would immediately shake his head. Every time you increased by 1 level 10 stats would be granted. That fact didn't change whether he was a level 50 or a 100. Essentially, that meant that the value of stats rose with each level. Leveling up from 1 to 10 to get the stats would probably be faster than hunting mice, but going from level 100 to 110 would take so much more effort than right now. When he took that point into account, he had no other choice but to go through this grueling process. Yeah, killing mice is the only way to restore my stats with the minimal risk. There are other things I can learn while killing mice. Hyun-woo has always lived with a positive attitude. The reason why he didn't quit computer prep school, even though he didn't have the money to buy a single bowl of black bean noodles, jjangmyeon, was thanks to his positive mindset. He also had a great amount of patience. Truthfully, the harsh training in reality helped him to learn a lot. In other games, victory was split into the attack and defense stats. There was no room for any other elements. However, in New World, a real sense of fighting and experience played a major role. The user's real strength and agility were not applied, but experience and reflex speed counted for a lot. That is, if someone was attacked 10 times with 10 points of agility, they could generally evade once. On the other hand, if they handled the situation with quick judgment, they'd be able to evade 2 or 3 out of 10 times. This is the same concept for when I'm attacking. By following the enemy's movements, he maintained an advantageous distance. It was a concept drilled into him over and over again when he learned Taekwondo a long time ago. Of course, with an advantageous position, it was easier to avoid or counterattack your opponent. In New World, the rules of reality were directly applied. It wasn't a game where you could just recklessly strike once and get hit once. It was a big enough benefit to know that. Hyun-woo began to exercise in his spare time from that day on. Exercise was the best way to hone his reflexes. The only exercise Hyun-woo could without spending any money was the Taekwondo he learned in elementary and middle school. When he went into high school, he stopped because of examinations, but he still had the skills of a third dan. He didn't remember everything he had learned, but it was still enough to work out by himself. As he was cleaning out the mart cellar, he moved his body in the spare moments. Afterward, he loosened his stiff body, stretched his legs, and did image training of fighting a bloody struggle with the mice. If he had a new thought, he adapted it in-game against the mice. The days passed like this and he regained 30 stat points. Even though he still had 50 points less than he'd had from the beginning, now he could fight the mice with his eyes closed. There were approximately 20 to 30 mice to face with each quest he received, and now it didn't even take him 10 minutes to clean them up. Of course, the speed at which he received the quests increased as well. My thought was right after all. Ark gets stronger the more I exercise. Afterwards, Hyun-woo tried using his Taekwondo techniques in New World. At first, there were a lot of awkward moments, but as he fought the mice, he became more accustomed to them. And after a week, he could face 2 or 3 mice at once without the use of the dagger. Thanks to that, he was able to save on the dagger's repair costs. What a truly deep and complex game. He was in the worst situation, but Hyun-woo was getting more and more fascinated with New World. Damn it, to think that I would actually die on purpose. Ark grumbled to himself in his faraway mind. A swarm of mice was pounding on him like crazy. On the 10th day after starting to hunt mice, Ark discovered yet another problem. Mice only gave 1 EXP. However, those points accumulated and reached 99%. Had the situation been different, he would be grinning from ear to ear, but Ark's expression was grim. There was no way to find the stats he hadn't regained yet if he leveled up like this. Ark was agonized about it, but he decided to pull the trigger. It was a way in which he would die on purpose and cut his experience. Every time he died, his experience was cut by 30% and his stats by 6 points. And by killing mice he gained 3% experience per 1 stat point. Overall, by dying once and killing mice to restore his stats, he was able to earn an extra 4 points. I won't lose out on a single point like this. He already invested 10 days into regaining his stats. Thus, it was ridiculous for him to start from a state of disadvantage after all that work. No, he couldn't accept that to happen. Ark steeled his resolve and let the mice hit him to death. Through repetitive mice hunting, he was finally able to regain 70 points in 10 days. Even so, he wasn't even a little happy. Even if I regain all of my points, I'll just end up where I started from. Damn it, just you wait and see. I will never forgive those bastards Andal and Bulma, who are caused all this suffering. Ark, who was grinding his teeth, started to show a mad glint in his eyes. Thanks to his wish for vengeance against Andal and Bulma, he was able to stick to the arduous work of restoring his stats. Around that time, he was able to obtain new knowledge from the game. You have obtained a new skill. Combat skill, beginner, passive art of fighting utilizing your fists and feet. Fighting without equipping a weapon will not demonstrate your strength, but your evasion and accuracy will become higher. These additional benefits can be had even when using weapons. Bare-handed striking power increased by 10%, accuracy up 3%, evasion up 3%. Just like Undying Will, I see that if you do one thing for long enough, the skills you need will naturally be made. Though they called themselves information sites, they didn't even have simple information like this. If anything, rather than proper information, there were baseless rumors that just caused confusion among the inexperienced players. Half of it was done as a joke, and the other half was meant to protect their advantageous positions. Those rumors fanned the distrust in Ark's human form. You never know, this could be a scheme unfolded by the other applicants. Those cheap bastards, it's no good to believe the information sites too much anyways. No, you can't even trust the other users. You have to find and learn everything by yourself. After the appearance of the skill, he was able to evade the mice's attacks more when he fought with his bare hands, and it became much more comfortable to move his body. Since he gained the bonuses even when using weapons, it was an absolutely necessary skill. Ark was becoming a famous specialty in Haroon. It was a given that people would be interested in the Ark who started killing only mice like crazy as soon as he entered the game. Furthermore, sometimes he would even let himself die on purpose. Because there was no way they could understand his actions, people started thinking that he had gone slightly bad in the head. They must have been really curious, but none of them mustered up the courage to approach Ark to ask him. They just mumbled amongst themselves. Just what is he trying to do by killing mice which doesn't give much experience or money? There's no way he's trying to level up by catching mice, right? Sure enough, if he's killed many, he should have already gone up at least 3 levels. But sometimes he dies, too. It's probably that he didn't know better in the beginning and died and is doing this to regain his stats. Somebody's words caught people's attention. There's a way to restore lost stats. There were still more people who didn't know than those who did. Yes, in the case of high levels, it takes such a long time to level up, so most people regain their stats by the time they level up. But at low levels, leveling up is fast, so if you hunt outside, it's easy to pass to the next level without regaining the stats. That's why he's only catching mice. But that person has already been catching them for more than 10 days. Just how many did he lose? You're right. Usually after that much one would just give up. He's awfully determined. However, their talk did not reach Ark's ears. There was no reason to listen to other people because he had a definite goal. And now simply clearing the mice had another meaning other than regaining stats. The fighting senses he had familiarized his body with so far was invaluable if only for the experience. Ah, how long has it been since I received such warm help, now I can die without regrets. Do not say such weak things. You have to live long and healthy. As Ark held the grandma's hand tightly and said that, the information window appeared. You have learned a new skill. Nursing, beginner, active. You can give patients hope by restoring their vigor and courage. You give the patient an increase of 20% in vigor and courage by using this. Mana use, 10 when Ark had completed the mouse-catching quest hundreds of times. Hansen sometimes gave him other quests, but they weren't impressive enough to make his ears perk up. You know Granny Johansson, right? That granny might die soon. They say they need to find someone to take care of her for a day. If it's you, I can trust and leave her to you. The restaurant is crowded these days, so they need some helping hand. If it's you, then I can entrust you with the job. For the most part the jobs were small like this. Honestly, he wanted to pass on them, but Hansen only gave quests one at a time. Whether he liked it or not, in order to receive the mouse-catching quests, he had to complete those job quests as well. However, it was not always a bad thing. For one, these quests had better pay. The pay was as much as 1 silver. The repair cost for the rusted sword and leather clothes was 30 copper, and wheat bread cost 5 copper. To Ark, 1 silver was not a small sum. On top of that, he learned skills as well. Well, they were insignificant skills he may or may not have a use for, but there was nothing wrong about expanding his skills. He was at the level where he could catch mice while taking breaks. Thanks to the quests, his intimacy with the NPCs of Haroon rose a lot. Whenever he crossed the streets, NPCs started conversations with him, and the price of wheat bread and repair fees dropped by an enormous amount. Sorry to trouble you, but could you buy 100 pieces of wheat bread from me? I am looking to repair a weapon. In the case of long swords, the repair cost exceeded a silver piece. But when Ark gave them his sword, he only paid 70 copper pieces to get it repaired. In this valley of beginners, 30 copper was a big sum. So quick, observant users did business with the merchants through Arkansas. Of course, Ark didn't offer this service for free. The price was 20% of the trade. This was Ark's proposal. Instead of 1 silver, you know that there is a 20 copper service fee. Can't I give it to you next time? I only have 10 coppers. No. Come next time. You're too much. It's only 10 coppers. If it's stingy, then sir, raise your reputation in Haroon village. If you do about 100 mice-catching quests, then the price should go down some. Well, your level won't rise though. I'll definitely pay you back next time. I only believe in money. Here's the money. At the sight of the offered 10 coppers, whose existence had been denied again and again, Ark snorted. For the second time, he decided not to trust users. On the day when Ark first came into New World and acted thoughtlessly, 2,000 other applicants started the game at around the same time. They were all his rivals. There was no doubt that there had been competitors in Haroon. There's a chance Andal and Bulma were candidates. No, I don't know about Bulma, but Andal definitely is one. Andal had gotten Ark into this mess. If Andal had figured out that Ark was an applicant, then that was the definite choice. The decisive and easiest way to stand on top of all the competition is to push off your opponents. And most applicants probably had the same thoughts. I, too, will now do the same without hesitation if given the chance. In the end, the game was like reality, a struggle for existence. He'd paid a price to realize his ignorance, but it was a relief that he'd come to know it sooner than later. Because he wouldn't make the same mistake again. He'd rather believe the NPCs than the competing users. There wasn't even a need to look at the situation. After having saved money fiercely, somewhere along the line, he had saved up a large sum of 5 gold in his bag. There wasn't a user who had spent half a month in the village of Haroon. It was the first time a user in Haroon had saved 5 gold pieces. Because he'd defeated mice with constant perseverance, he had only 1 point left to restore. The problem was that his experience was at 99%. Do I have to die one more time? Now, dying wasn't even a big deal. Ark had no intention of giving up on even 1 point. In order to die yet another time, he went looking for Hansen to receive a quest. I've completed the previous quest you gave me. Please give me another job. But Hansen's response was strange. Hansen looked over Ark with a peculiarly warm light in his eyes and said the following words. There is no longer any work to give you in this town. What? Ark was shocked. There were no commissions. Doesn't this mean there wasn't a way to restore the remaining stat? Just like in the past, he was still level 1. But because of his excessive fighting experience, he was confident he could knock out a wild dog. But 1 death meant experience was cut by 30%. Because wild dogs gave a lot of experience, 30% EXP would fill up before he could earn 6 points. In the end, it meant that even if he died fighting the wild dogs, he'd still lose out on points. I never thought these quests had a limit line. Even if you looked in the forums, there wasn't anything about the limit of requests in beginning villages. Although he hadn't counted, Ark had done over 300 quests so far. Ark had also thought there were unlimited quests. To suddenly say there were no quests. Do I have to end it here and start with 1 point missing? It was similar to having something stick out like a sore thumb. If there were a lot of points missing, then he would simply overlook and ignore it. However, giving up with a single point missing didn't sit right with him. At that moment, Hansen suddenly grasped Ark's hand and opened his mouth. Until now, I have seen a great amount of people in this place, but there has never been anyone who gave as much as you have for the village. I am touched. Well, that's pretty obvious. Are you nuts? Who would repeat these types of quests over 300 times? Ark was enraged but put a tight clamp on his anger and awkwardly tried to laugh. This place is like my home. If it's something I can do, of course I have to help out. It hurts my heart that there isn't anything else I can help with. His intimacy with Hansen was already at its maximum. Though there wasn't anything that would come of it, there was no need to cut down the intimacy he'd raised. This was something he'd felt so far while playing New World. The NPCs talked and acted like real people. It was rumored, each and every one of the NPCs globally could think independently like real people. It was a given that they worked in the day and slept at night. There were even times when they caught sick and didn't open shop. There were cases of them interacting with users and deciding the user needed to learn to speak more politely, which caused the intimacy to drop and their prices to rise. Don't you think there might be some other kind of job? I want to help so badly I'm going crazy. No, this is plenty now. You didn't look over anyone with contempt and worked without rest for this frontier village. You even went as far as to have several near-death experiences. I know it all. You are already a hero in this village. And I, with the feeling that I have nurtured you, venture to call you this. You are a mouse hunter. Suddenly, as cheerful music flowed forth, the information window appeared. You have received Haroon Village's Elder Hansen's title of Mouse Hunter. You are recognized as a specialist at dealing with mice. When facing mice, your attack power increases by 30%. When facing mice, the chance of critical hits rises by 20%. The chance of evading mouse attacks rises by 20%. Asterisk the received title increases all stats by a bonus of 1. Asterisk fame increases by 50. You have learned a new skill. Spirit of the Cat, beginner, active a cat's roar which, in the eyes of mice, will cause them to tremble in terror. 30-second paralysis. Attack and defense, fighting morale, decreases by 20%, only applies to mice. Mana consumption, 80 in a moment. Ark's downcast face immediately brightened. The ability to deal harder blows to mice made him happy, if nothing else. The important thing was the all stats +1. He had received an unimagined bonus. At the same time, he must have received a few experience points because the accumulated 99% experience had disappeared and gained a level. Ark hastily opened his status window and confirmed it. Every stat was fixed at 16, and only his intelligence stayed at 15. In the corner, he saw the sparkling 10 points he'd won through leveling up. This kind of windfall. Ark was smiling from ear to ear. Now, Ark was no longer behind a stat point, and he was 5 points ahead of other people. This was an enormously difficult achievement. Until now, there were almost no known ways to raise stats besides leveling up. There were rumors which said if you did some layered quests or were bestowed with a title, stats would increase. However, there was no detailed information available, but Ark, who was still level 1 and in the beginner town, had gained a bonus of 6 points. Repeating the mice hunting quests 300 times paid off. He felt a tingly sense of delight. At the same time, his hardships immediately melted away. Ark left the information window up for the moment and wondered. He was worried about where to distribute the newly attained stats. Because he didn't yet know what his profession was going to be, he had to be careful with the distribution. In the end, Ark invested all the points in agility, as he'd previously planned. Agility was, for the most part, a stat most professions needed. As it was a good thing that beginners invest all their points in agility, Ark came to a conclusion. There, now I should be able to leisurely start hunting wild dogs. Ark was just about to turn his body away, while wearing a satisfied smile. But hey, don't you perhaps have any thoughts of trying a new job? What? Didn't you say there wasn't any work? No, well, it's not village work, but there's a job that bothers me a little. Ark turned around with an interested expression. Until now, he hadn't heard about anyone receiving a quest from Hansen besides the village ones. Nonetheless, after completing over 300 mice assassination quests, Ark had also received only village quests. However, for the first time, he had received a different commission from Hansen. Is it a quest available only after you've received the Mouse Hunter title? So, to speak, it was the first. It was a given he was interested. Having already received a title and bonus stats, he was so happy he could hardly contain it. Ark quickly replied to Hansen. If it's Grandpa's request, I'll do any work no matter what it is. Thank you. But to be honest, even I can't make a judgment on what this opportunity is. I'm not sure how dangerous it will be either. This was the reason why I couldn't bring it up until now. Anyway, if you are willing to do it, look for the bar owner, Creighton, and ask for the details. The bar owner Creighton's worries. The bar owner Creighton has been agonizing over a new worry for several days. Meet him and listen to his situation. Level of difficulty, I will go look for him right away. Ark bowed and set off for the bar. Oh, Arkansas. As expected, it's you who came. Creighton greeted him with a welcoming voice. Ark was probably the first user he'd called by name. Yes. Hi, how are you? So, I heard there's some kind of problem. Indeed. No, there isn't. To be honest, it's not enough to call it a problem. Over the past few days, I've been hearing some strange talk. Strange talk. As you know, mice have continued to appear no matter how many you've killed recently. You should know how much I suffered because of that, right? I'm the one who suffered. While receiving just 10 pieces of bread. Ark had a fit of anger, but on the surface, he laughed naively and nodded his head. I know. But isn't it okay these days? It's a little quieter. However, only a few days ago, I heard some strange talk from some guests. You know the Harrelel Mountain in this area, right? While crossing that mountain, they discovered a strange cave. Do you know what they said was inside the cave? The vile mice. They said a really unbelievable number of mice were living there. Then has that swarm of mice been coming to the village from that cave? There's a high possibility that's the case. But if tourists' words were true, we should take action. Creighton scratched his beard and gave Ark a look. It was a look that hoped Ark would look into the details. Is it fine if I investigate that cave? That's right. If it's the one who received the title of Mouse Hunter, I can entrust it to you. This guy can spread rumors throughout town quickly. Okay, I'll take a look at once. Ark accepted without much thought. Then, his request window changed to Unknown Cave Exploration. The difficulty level rose from to G, but he didn't pay much attention to it. In the information he'd looked up, G difficulty quests were about the level of catching wild dogs. I'm thankful. Since I've found out the approximate area, I'll mark it on your map. After Creighton had finished what he was saying, the map window spread out. The enormously large map was mostly black, and only the areas surrounding Haroon were lit up. In the inner part of the Harrelel mountain chain surrounding the village, there was a blinking light. As expected, it was an area that he'd never seen even once in the information sites. So, to speak, it was a hidden dungeon. It was common knowledge that dungeons were treasure houses for items. Although because it was a G difficulty quest in a beginning village he could not hope for an impressive item, for Ark who was equipping a rusted sword, even a single broken shield would be a big treasure. Above all, discovering a dungeon no one else knew about held an impressive sense of achievement. Ark then left the bar in a hurry to prepare for his journey. I guess I should organize these now. There were a lot of odds and ends filling up his bag. The 3 leathers and meat he'd gained while catching wolves and the 10 wheat breads he'd gained each time he completed one of 300 mice-killing quests. At first, he had eaten them as he'd received them, but after he started killing mice with these the wheat breads accumulated. It was to the point that he would eat 1 to 2 of them when his satiety dropped all the way to the bottom. And so, after a while he had accumulated over 1,000 wheat breads. Even though they were stored by 100 pieces each, there wasn't any room for other items. I'll leave 100 pieces securely in my bag and let's sell the rest. Ark went to the general merchandise store and sold his wheat bread. Originally the wheat bread was a product that couldn't be sold once it was bought. But thanks to his maximum intimacy, there was no impossibility for Arkansas. Each wheat bread was worth 1 copper piece. Of course, if he'd sold them to users, he'd receive 2 copper pieces, but he couldn't not afford to waste time for just a copper piece difference. For Ark, who only had a limited time to play the game, time was of the essence. Selling 2,000 wheat breads yielded 20 silvers. Ark used that money to repair his equipment and left for the Harrelel Mountains. With a yelp, the wolf's body was split in half. The bodies of the wolves slowly turned into fragments, dropping leather and meat. Ark gathered the spoils and opened his status window. Character name Arc Race Human Fame 50 Level 5 Profession None Title Mouse Hunter Health 155 Mana 100 Strength 26 Agility 36 Stamina 26 Wisdom 16 Intelligence 16 Luck 16 Looks like I can deal with a wolf without too much of a problem. Even after receiving the request, Arc didn't immediately head off to the cave. Although the dungeon was supposedly in the area around the starting village, a level 2 player couldn't be conceited enough to stroll up and down wherever he wanted. There were no knowing what dangers there might be. The bitter experience of death penalties was a mistake Arc did not want to repeat. Therefore, he could only be at ease by gaining some levels before reaching the cave. On the second day of dedicating himself to hardcore hunting, Arc finally reached level 5. He invested all of the stat points from level 3 into agility, and then raised his strength to increase his attack power. Lastly, he put 10 points into stamina to increase his health. Since every point of stamina raised his health by 5, it was now at 155. This may be obvious, but Arc had become much stronger. At first, his life had gone down by 30 when he was scratched by a wolf, but now it was down to about 20. Besides, he had gained exceptional fighting experience from defeating at least 10,000 mice. If he was lucky, he could kill one wolf after losing only 70 health. It was something normal users at level 5 couldn't even be able to imagine. As he hunted the way he wanted without a hitch, his confidence also rose. Should I slowly head over to the cave now? Arc rose from his seat. Only 30 wheatbreads were left out of the 100 he had prepared. He drank water whenever needed, but he had been hard-pressed to do so with the wheatbreads. If his satiety dropped to below 50, his stats temporarily fell. There are good points to learning how to cook. In New World, the art of cooking was its own skill. If the cooking skill rose, it wasn't just the decreased fullness and stamina that could be restored, but strength and stamina could also be temporarily raised. Additionally, a realistic taste could be savored. That's why everyone wanted to learn the cooking skill. Nevertheless, Arc still had no thoughts of learning to cook. To learn a manufacturing skill, you have to meet the master artisan NPC, and the cooking master was in a faraway place. There would probably be an opportunity to learn it someday, so there was no reason to invest the time to travel all the way there. Just learning the cooking skill didn't mean he'd be able to immediately make luxurious dishes. He wouldn't even be able to afford the ingredients to cook the luxury food. There was also the inconvenience of having to carry the necessary ingredients. The bag Arc had gotten when he'd started was all he had, so he didn't have much storage space. He couldn't afford to carry cooking ingredients. It was definitely a vital skill, but there was no need for him to go through hell just to learn it early game. In any case, wheatbread is good enough for now. Since I have 30 wheatbreads left, it should be enough for a round trip to the cave. Arc checked his map and began aggressively looking for the cave. He had already ventured deep into Harrowell Mountain while hunting wild dogs and wolves. The entrance to the cave was not far. He followed the mountain slope, and after 30 minutes of walking, a corpse of old oaks emerged. His eyes picked up the cleverly hidden cave entrance within the corpse. As soon as Arc put one foot into the cave, a sound effect similar to a sonorous shout rang out as the information window surfaced. You have discovered a suspicious cave with an acrid smell and eerie chills flowing out of the deep and dark cave in the Harrowell Mountain range. You can feel that old secrets are being treasured here. You have discovered a dungeon no one has found until now. Because you are a new explorer, if you register yourself in the Hall of Fame you will gain 500 experience and 50 fame. Will you like to register? I refuse. Arc replied without hesitation. He had to hunt at least 10 wolves to get 500 experience. If he registered the cave in the Hall of Fame, a lot of people would find out about it. For an undiscovered cave like this, there was no knowing what secrets or items might be waiting. The greatest advantage of a newly discovered dungeon was that he could monopolize it. He hadn't scouted it yet, and there was a high chance that a higher-level user might beat him to the punch. On the New World homepage, there were simple-minded users who uploaded dungeon item lists and many others who laid in wait while biding their time. I'd rather kill 10 wolves than to register this cave in the Hall of Fame. Once again, he was glad that he had done a lot of research. If he'd come here without knowing anything like the first time, he would have thoughtlessly registered it in the Hall of Fame. However, Arc was not the insipid person he used to be. It was common sense for him to be more cautious and alert than monsters, NPCs, or even other users. Now, what exactly is in here? Arc controlled his trembling excitement and stepped into the dungeon. The smell of something rotting was overflowing with realism and stimulated his senses. It was so strong and terrible that he wondered if there really was a need to make even smells so real. It happened when Ark had walked 100 meters into the cave. Suddenly, his foot sank into something squishy. Startled, he jumped and felt the ground wriggle and climb up. In another moment, the image of the blackness swallowing him flashed into his mind and he lashed out. What's all this? Don't tell me they're all mice. Ark turned pale with fright. The things that were crawling up from the ground were all mice. That was not all. He hadn't noticed it until now, but the pitch-black mouse swarm was covering the entire cave. Every time the mice moved, it was like a wriggling wave over the whole cave. The mice emitted a terrible bloodthirst that made his spine go cold. The courage he had dedicated himself to raising was no use. Ark urgently flailed in the darkness. With one blow, a number of mice went flying away and rolled onto the ground. That was thanks to the Mouse Hunter title he'd received, which raised his attack power and chance of critical hits. Do you know how many mice I've killed until now? Once he saw how big of an effect his one blow had, his fear dissipated. No matter how many there were, in the end they were just mice. With the attack bonus, even if he didn't land a critical hit, there was no need for a second blow. Without rest, Ark mowed down the mice that were coming at him from all sides. However, the number of mice did not seem to decline. Damn, if it goes on like this there'll be no end. I have to run away. The spirit of the cat. Although he had learned it, he hadn't actually thought that he'd be able to use it. Anyway, the spirit of the cat demonstrated an absolute effect on the mice. As soon as Ark used the skill, a splittingly searing cat's cry pierced the air and the shape of a black cat appeared above his head. Upon seeing the cat's flashing eyes, the mice were paralyzed with fear. In that space of time, Ark cut down the mice in his path and escaped to the outside of the cave. Although the paralyzing effect on the mice wore off quickly, they didn't chase him out of the cave. Phew, what a relief. Outside, Ark ate wheat bread and drank water to restore his stamina. For there to be an innumerable swarm of mice. It was truly a dizzying experience. But I can't just give up like this. Ark checked his quest window. The quest hadn't been updated yet. That meant he had to go in further. No, quest aside, he already had experience hunting tens and thousands of mice. It would be stupid of him to give up on the quest just because the cave was infested with mice. I charged right in since it was my first time and didn't know a thing, but I should be fine if I calmly worked myself forward from the entrance. Ark entered the cave, cleared about 100 mice, and retreated. After doing this cycle 3 or 4 times, a sound effect rang out and a message window popped up. You have learned a new skill. Sword Mastery, Beginner, Passive. You have taken the first step towards being a swordsman. From now on, whenever you wield a sword, all penalties received shall disappear. You can now use your sword as an extension of your own hand. You have become more skilled with connecting your sword skills to circumstances when you use them with other skills. You will gain bonus attack power, based on your sword's skill level. Asterisk. It has become possible to use the effect of swordsmanship as a combo with hand-to-hand combat. Swordsmanship follows the levels of sword mastery in hand-to-hand combat and rises accordingly. Sword mastery has finally appeared. When he was hunting in the village, it was almost always with bare hands. It had been a waste to use the sword to kill the mice and have to pay the repair fee. That's why sword mastery, a skill that other users would have gained first, had only just appeared. However, it was fortunate that he had learned sword mastery later. When he was first catching the mice, Ark hadn't known about the existence of a separate sword mastery skill. If he had known, he probably would have used his sword despite the repair fees. But because he hadn't known, he had continued to fight with his bare hands. Thanks to that, he had been able to learn hand-to-hand combat. Although hand-to-hand combat was a barehanded skill, the bonuses applied slightly to every weapon he used. The bonuses from sword mastery, if they were combined with the bonuses from hand-to-hand combat, then in actuality his attack power was raised by 1.5 times. That was an effect he was able to feel right away. Moving is very comfortable. Although he was wielding a sword, there were no breaks in his movements. The attacks flowed like water. Thanks to the effect of sword mastery, while he was wildly swinging his sword, he was also able to perform kicks. The skill that had been impossible until a little while ago had become possible. And without resting, he was able to ward off the attacking swarm of mice. So, I see that if a related skill is learned, then new abilities form too. For the hand-to-hand combat he had regarded as trivial to be so useful was something he hadn't imagined. When his combined attacking power rose, his hunting speed rose exponentially. With a full health bar, he was able to hunt 200 mice with ease. After going into the cave 5 or 6 times like that, The entrance to the cave was jet black with mouse corpses. To make a rough estimate, 1,000 of them had fallen over and died. He had killed so many that his level had gone up to 6 as well. Ark pushed past the disgusting mouse corpses and went into the cave. Just then, something deep within the cave sparkled. When he got closer and looked, it was a body with only bones left. If a user dies, his corpse disappeared with his revival. So that must mean this is the corpse of an NPC. Then there was a big possibility that his quest information would be updated. Ark sifted through the remains and discovered a small piece of parchment on the inside. It may have been something the corpse had written. There was minute handwriting written on the surface. Unfortunate travelers left behind piece of parchment has been acquired. 3 years have passed since I received Sir Viscount Havestein's command and set out searching for its trails. And with divine intervention, I was able to find what I was searching for by pure chance. But to think such an unimaginable demon would be living within the cave. I was extremely caught off guard. If that was here, then I should have definitely anticipated trouble. Everything is my fault. Because I've already come carelessly into the cave, I've suffered a huge wound. Is the Viscount's desire going to come to an end like this? I am so bitter. It's regretful, but the secret within the darkness of this cave will be. Whatever was written in continuation of the parchment had been gnawed away by mice. I can smell that there's more to this somewhere. As he'd thought, the cave wasn't simply a mouse cavern. He couldn't understand the contents of the parchment, but there was definitely something inside the cave. The probability that the mentioned that was an item was high. Ark's motivation swelled inside him. He tucked the parchment away and continued into the cave. With one blow, Ark threw 3 or 4 mice to the floor. There were only mice within the cave. The mice at the entrance had been nothing. Wherever he went, there were mice running at him from all directions. The number of mice that were cut down and cut again seemed to increase more and more. But who was Ark? In Haroon, he had cleared hundreds of mice requests, and he had struck down as many as 1,000 mice and had earned the title of Mouse Hunter. You bastards, today you've really met your match. Spirit of the cat. He may have been driven into a corner, but at least there was no risk of death. When it became dangerous, he immediately used the spirit of the cat to paralyze the mice and escaped from the cave. Ark crazily ran in and out of the cave and slowly stepped further and further into the cave. After 3 hours had passed, yet another problem emerged. I underestimated it because it was just a beginner dungeon, but it's deeper than I thought. But I only have 10 wheat breads left now. The problem was the wheat bread. If his satiety dropped, the rate of health restoration would severely decrease. If it dropped to below half, his stats would fall temporarily, and if it fell to the 0, in the worst-case scenario, he could even die. If he ran out of wheat bread, there'd be no way for him to continue exploring. Do I have to go back to the village and stock up on wheat bread? That was a problem in itself. Even if you cleared monsters, after a certain amount of time they spawned again. And the smaller they were, the faster they respawned. Though he'd advanced hundreds of meters into the cave, if he went back to the village and came back, he'd have to start from the beginning. I'm gonna go crazy. If I knew it'd be like this, I wouldn't have sold the wheat bread. As Ark was having those thoughts, a brilliant plan surfaced in his mind. Could it be possible? Ark thought about it for a moment and stood up. Well, there's probably nothing to lose by trying. Asterisk swish, smack. Asterisk Ark was struck by a wolf wandering on the outskirts of the cave. The wolf snarled and leapt at him. Now, wolves and the like were no match for Arkansas. Brandishing his sword like lightning, Ark put the wolf into a near death. But when it came to the final blow, he put away his sword. While being careful not to kill the wolf, he controlled his strength and struck it with his foot. Asterisk yelp. Asterisk the wolf whimpered as he kicked it aside. However, Ark held no mercy for it. He stared at it as it panted. When it seemed to get a little better, he beat it, and after doing this for 3 minutes the wolf finally went into a frenzy. The forest violently shook, as the wolf cried out with all of its remaining strength. A dozen wolves who heard the heart-rending story of their comrade rushed out at him. It's done. Ark had a smile full of satisfaction on his face as he rapidly fled towards the cave. Ark quickly used Spirit of the Cat to paralyze the mice and went deeper into the cave. When he reached a place where there were less mice, the penalization wore off and the mice piled themselves layer upon layer on Arkansas. I might even die if I fail. Ark didn't pull out his sword and concentrated on using all his strength to evade the attacks. But because there were so many mice attacking him, he felt as if his life was getting sucked out with a straw. To top it all, the wolves were pitching in too, so in an instant, he was bitten an extreme number of times. However, soon after, the wolves stopped attacking him. The mice had started to attack the wolves too. The wolf horde was startled when the enormous swarm of mice ran at them. However, they were wolves. The wolves couldn't just tuck their tails and flee. The wolves bared their fangs and started attacking the mice. Yes, just as planned. Ark shouted in delight. New World boasted a system that had few differences with reality. That meant whether they were animals or monsters, it was the same. In fact, even when Ark came to New World, he had seen instances of wolves catching and eating rabbits and field mice. That meant that natural enemies applied too. Ark, who had figured that out, had purposely gathered the wolves and lured them into the cave. The result was a huge success. The best, most perfect situation had opened up for Arkansas. In the middle of the cave, the wolf horde were leaping and bucking and the mice were enveloped in chaos. Since the mice must have judged the wolves to be more dangerous than Ark, they were all running at the wolves. Ark took a step back and watched the mice and wolves fight at his leisure. Each time his mana was restored, he used Spirit of the Cat. After 10 minutes had passed in that manner, the mice were almost gone. Who? You did well. With a satisfied smile, Ark took care of the staggering wolves. Although they were in a dying state, the wolves still gave the proper amount of experience. Simply put, it was like taking a candy from a child. To earn this unexpected benefit, it was like killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Am I perhaps a genius? Although he'd thought of it himself, it was truly a brilliant method. There were no restrictions on what methods you used to solve a quest. You could even go as far as to kill the person who gave you the request. Of course, in that case, the penalties attached were extreme, but the near-infinite degree of freedom was one of New World's charming center points. Even after that, Ark gathered all the wolves in the area and had them fight with the mice. Then he cleared off the mice and wolves that were left. Thanks to that, his level went up and he reached level 8, and although he'd only consumed 2 wheat breads, he was able to go deeper into the cave. This is a really deep cave. Though I think I've gone really deep into the cave, I don't see any worthwhile items. Surely it's not going to end with just mice all the way to the end. Bit by bit, anxiety reared his head. It was when Ark was having those thoughts that all of a sudden, with a thud sound, the mice that had been running at him crazily, abruptly flinched and ran, scattering left and right. Huh? What's this? Ark, who had been turning his head back and forth with an incredulous look, took in a sudden breath. From within the darkness, on the other side of where the mice had fled, were a pair of red orbs. What is this bastard? The slowly approaching red orbs took form. Surprisingly, the orbs were the eyes of a mouse. It wasn't a mouse the likes of which Ark had faced until now. It was easily 10 times bigger than a wolf, a massive mouse monster. Enraged that some bastard had intruded, it roared and the entire cave shook. This terrible fear. Ark's legs trembled and the strength went right out of him. Terrified, the wolves tucked their tails and fled out of the cave. Oh my God. No way, this bastard. Was the identity of the demon written on the parchment this monster? It was highly likely. He had written that he'd gotten a fatal wound in the cave. And the place where he had died hadn't been far from the entrance. For he who had traveled a distance after receiving a command from an aristocrat, to have been unable to escape the cave with a fatal wound, that had been an inconsistency. He went all the way into the cave and met this demon. Then, while inflicted with a fatal wound, he ran away only to be attacked by a swarm of mice, and he collapsed. That's what happened. If he thought like that, there were no inconsistencies. And it was highly likely that Ark would be punished with the same fate. The dread Ark felt when he had first met a wolf was incomparable to the horror that drowned him now. At this critical moment, the contents of the quest were updated. Boss monster Black Bear Mouse has appeared. The quest has been updated. Unknown cave exploration: the mysterious organism living within the cave. You discovered a massive demon mouse while exploring the cave. There's no doubt this demon mouse has been controlling all the other mice. Escape the cave quickly and tell this truth to the bar owner Creighton. Level of difficulty, F. As expected, there wasn't any mention of having to kill the demon mouse. That was probably because at his current level, that was impossible. Moreover, just relaying the information about the demon mouse had a difficulty level of F. To be sure, he saw a large possibility that the pitch-black mouse swarm was going out of the cave to avoid the demon mouse. All of the possible situations were the worst, but Ark's eyes were actually glowing instead. Then that means this mouse is a lump of experience and items. His greed exceeded his horror. An avaricious light sparkled in Ark's eyes. A boss monster was no different from a treasure chest that gave all adventurers the honor of finding it. It was the first boss monster he'd met. He couldn't just withdraw without fighting it. Running away is gonna be tough anyways. Then let's find out how strong you are and fight once. Ark courageously raised his sword and charged. However, in the next moment, his expression changed to one of embarrassment. He had swung the rusted sword with all his strength, but the demon mouse didn't even register the blow. The thick leather covering the body had deflected the sword. The huge mouse lashed out with its front paw. When he blocked it with his sword, his palm throbbed from the impact. Oh my god, I blocked it with my sword but my stamina was still cut. A full bite from a wolf cut his health by 30 points. Even though he'd blocked the attack from the demon mouse, 30 health had been cut away. If he was really hit, he wouldn't be able to endure 2 or 3 hits. Damn it, spirit of the cat. When Ark used this as the last measure, the regular mice were paralyzed. Shortly after, the demon mouse roared and the mice quickly regained consciousness. Oh my god, spirit of the cat doesn't work. Ark completely lost his previous ambition and turned his body away. In that moment, the mouse swarm attacked him from all directions. While Ark was struggling in the mouse swarm, a heavy blow connected with his back and pain exploded. You have been stunned. All movements are blocked for 5 seconds. Immediately, his health was cut by 50 and his consciousness became fuzzy. Before his consciousness could return, he was hit by another attack. At last his health reached rock bottom, and Ark collapsed to the floor. Damn it. Ark fumed and went inside the bar. After the demon mouse's attacks, Ark lost his life. When he opened his eyes, he was back at the quartermaster at the entrance of Haroon village. However, the quest had updated. He had to stop by the tavern to give necessary reports. Oh. Ark, you have returned safe and sound. As per usual, Kraden greeted Ark gladly. Ark immediately took a look around and shut his mouth before giving his report. Inside the tavern, some users were sitting and eyeing them. Because Ark did not want anyone else to know about the existence of the cave, he called Kraden out to the warehouse. Kraden's face turned pale after Ark had told him what he had encountered inside the cave. The cave has been inhabited by a terrifying monster. If that's the case, this is no time to be standing around like this. Before the bastard comes and brings danger to the village, we have to tell Lord the truth. I'll also ask him to send soldiers at once to deal with the bastard. Ah, you can't. Ark shouted indignantly. What? Why not? What do you mean? Well, you know. Damn, I shouldn't have talked about it. If the Lord dispatched soldiers, then of course the users would also come to know of it. If that happened, Ark will no longer have monopoly over the treasures of the cave. Soldiers might take it, or give onlooking players an opportunity to take it. That would make Ark feel jealous to death. That can't happen, absolutely not. The cave is mine. Up until now, how much time have I invested in order to obtain treasures inside the cave? Now there's one demon mouse to kill, they can't just come waltzing in at the last moment. However, he could not say his thoughts out loud. After contemplating on what to do, Ark put his hopes on his intimacy with Kraden and spoke. This is a job you requested of me. You believed in me and entrusted it to me, right? To repay your trust, I want to solve this with my own hands. So please give me a little more time. I will certainly repay your trust in me. Yes, I didn't know you cared that much about me. Of course, I believe in you. However, this isn't a matter I can decide on by myself. The safety of the whole village is hanging on this. Even if we barely miss the timing, everything could become dangerous. I'm saying this can't wait until you've become a worthy warrior. I'm begging you. Give me a chance to restore my honor. Ark said it with an imploring light in his eyes. Truthfully, he wasn't the type of person to say those apologetic words to anyone. However, he was facing an NPC. Even though he acted almost exactly like a human, in the end he was still a computer-generated artificial intelligence. There was no reason for his pride to turn sour over saying such sorry words to an AI. As Ark begged pathetically, Kraden deliberated with an uncomfortable look. For you of all people to say such things, I can't stay stubborn. That this village is peaceful right now is all thanks to you, after all. Alright, then let's do it like this. For now, I'll give you 10 days. If I don't hear from you after that, I'll ask Lord Jackson for help. Will that do? 10 days. 1 day in real life was 3 in the game. So, to speak, 1 week was 3 days in real life. The time it had taken to clear the cave until now was already precious. Furthermore, to play the game he couldn't give up his job, so even if he reduced his sleeping time to the maximum, the time he had left was a little more than a day. And Creighton was wearing a resolute expression that said he couldn't make any more exceptions. In the end, Ark nodded. Though it was too much to ask. There was nothing he could do but to try. I understand. Let's do that to put the village's safety first. I'm glad you understand. Then I'll believe and entrust this to you. The quest has been updated. The mysterious organism living within the cave, after hearing about the demon mouse in the hidden cave, Creighton has asked you to defeat the demon mouse. Stipulation: this request has a time limit of 10 days. If you do not clear the demon mouse within this time, Creighton will tell the truth to the Lord, and the request will be automatically cancelled. Level of difficulty, +F. As he'd anticipated, the quest that involved personally slaying the demon mouse had a plus attached to the difficulty level. Plus indicated an elite quest, something that had to be completed with a party. F difficulty level was roughly for level 15 and below. That meant that this was a request that could be resolved with a party of users at level 15. However, when it came to parties now, Ark was the type of person to grind his teeth. There's no way I'm doing it with a party. To be honest, it was a matter Ark had thought about often. The quest's contents were to deal with the demon mouse, but at his level of 8, it was impossible. A week from now, I have to somehow secretly go into the demon mouse's cave and take the treasure. As long as he was able to get the treasure, whatever happened to the demon mouse was none of his concern. As Ark was thinking that, he turned to leave. Closely watching Creighton abruptly asked. After a closer look, it seems like you don't have many supplies left. Yes, as I spent time on the cave investigation, before I knew it. Ark replied with the most pitiful expression on his face. He thought he might be able to receive some free wheat breads. If he could save even 1 silver, he could put on a pitiful expression any day. Then, after staring blankly at Ark's face, Creighton opened his mouth again. Do you have any thoughts of learning how to cook? Cooking? Ark questioned with an expression that said he didn't follow. Actually, at one time I went traveling to a lot of places like you. The thing that troubled me the most was the problem of food. However, even if you learn how to cook, if you don't have the ingredients, isn't that just useless? So, in order to solve that problem, I started learning how to cook in a completely different way. It's a cooking method that doesn't cost money, and there's no need to carry around ingredients. Does such a cooking method exist? It was really a sound that made his ears perk up. All right, until now I haven't found any worthy travelers, so I haven't passed this down to anyone yet. If it's you, who has unfailingly helped me this long with all your heart, it's a different matter. You always carried an ample supply of bread with you, so I thought you wouldn't need this. If you want it, I'll teach it to you. Yes, please. You have learned a new skill. Survival cooking, special, beginner, passive. The owner of the bar in Haroon, Creighton, created this original method of cooking. If you learn this skill, you can use almost every type of food found in nature as ingredients to make food. However, the result cannot be predicted. Therefore, to find out the effects of the food, you may have to put your life on the line. Ingredient foraging, beginner, passive. You can gather a variety of food ingredients from nature. Put your life on the line to discover the effect of food. The last part was troubling, but he was fairly satisfied with the skill. He could use all the ingredients he could find in nature to make food. Then if he just learned several recipes, he could endure for several days in remote places like the cave even without wheat bread. Indeed, survival cooking had a name that suited it perfectly. For him to learn such a skill for free, NPCs had to be treated with friendliness after all. And on top of that, Creighton pulled out a large pot and handed it to him. If you're to do survival cooking, you're going to need this too. You have acquired an iron pot for survival cooking. Thank you. Ark bowed and slipped out of the bar. Because there was a schedule, he didn't have a moment to waste. Ark immediately went to the general store and sold off all the wolf leathers he had saved. Then he swallowed his tears and bought 1 recovery potion. Until now, his spirit had somehow endured, but with the demon mouse, he couldn't spare money in facing it. This time, with his death, he had lost 6 stats. Though he would probably be able to restore his stats killing the mice in the cave, he didn't have the time to waste on this again. The price for a health potion that restores 100 life was a staggering 5 gold. Thanks to his intimacy, he only had to pay 3 gold and 50 silvers. The fortune he had accumulated bit by bit like a diligent ant was 1/5 gone. If I add the equipment repair fee to this, automatically, he puffed out a sigh. However, Ark was resolute. This was an investment. If he could get just one decent treasure from within the cave, even that would compensate for everything. For the last time, Ark had his rusted sword and leather clothes repaired at the blacksmith and set off for the cave again.